Welcome everybody to emergency preparedness. Now Stephanie went over emergency preparedness. Oh yeah, to start, the red quizzes are the ones that we're using for this one. So now Stephanie did a great presentation on this at our Winter Wonderland, but I'm just going to go through some of the things that we might see a little bit more of during this time of year. To start, does everybody know what this is and where this is? This is the Bethany Meadows Emergency Preparedness Plan. It's going to have all of our policies and procedures in there and how to deal with different disaster events. On each neighborhood, in each facility that we have, there are red totes. Those are our emergency totes, and there are copies of this in each of those totes. I strongly encourage you, if you have a few minutes during your day, to read through this. Everyone is responsible for knowing what is in this packet. And it's never a bad idea to have an understanding of what we do in the event of an emergency. You know, we do our drills every month, but you know, sometimes we might forget what we do during those drills. So it's highly important to know what's in this. So, like I said, I just kind of want to discuss today what the purpose is of our emergency preparedness plan and then some of the events that we might see during this time of year. So, spring, summer, what are some of the emergency situations that we could potentially see roll through Brandon? Tornado, severe weather, flooding, not necessarily a huge problem where we're at here. We're up on a hill, luckily, but I've been telling the other groups this. When I was an intern here 4 years ago, we had a major flash flood, and the courtyard out on Meadows, the water was at least a couple inches up on the windows out there. I mean, it's like a pool. So flooding can happen out here, so we want to know what to do in the event of those situations. So just running through the overall major purpose of our emergency preparedness plan is to inform all Bethany employees of the steps needing to be taken in the event of an emergency. Who is the highest ranking person that needs to be notified, or who is the person in charge in the event of an emergency? Yeah, it is me out here and Deb in Sioux Falls. So if either Deb or myself are not at our respective locations, it is the director of nursing, so Katie or Joanne. If neither one of them is there, it is the charge nurse on Plum or the charge nurse on Dakota. So this is after hours, of course, if none of us are in the building. So a disaster really can be defined as anything like a fire, tornado, blizzard, gas leak, flood, electrical power outage, bomb threat, heating failure, explosion. You know, you never know when these are going to hit. We just had a blizzard 3 weeks ago. So you never think that would happen, but luckily we were prepared and staff knew what to do because they've read through our emergency preparedness plan. You know, we've experienced that before. So one of the most important factors in an emergency situation is notification, letting people know what's going on properly. So what we used to do was say code XYZ. So I think the missing resident used to be code purple, if I'm not mistaken. Now we want to the point notification. So when we have a fire, it's fire, room so-and-so. Missing residents, blank neighborhood. You always want to be very direct. You know, go over the intercom and say a tornado watch is in effect. Please start emergency procedures. And you want to say each of those things 3 times. So when you're making notification over the overhead, it needs to be 3 times so people have an understanding of what's going on. Upon completion of the event, the all clear needs to be sounded 3 times as well. So fire, all clear, so-and-so neighborhood, missing resident, all clear, so-and-so neighborhood. Key personnel will be notified by the in-charge person. And then if your department heads are here, go to your respective departments and wait for further instructions to give to your employees. Just something to touch on that, you know, we hope we never have to do, but that's evacuate the facility. So just a few of the things that we need to have an understanding of. So the person in charge is going to have a red ID band around their arm. So they know this person is in charge. In case we have to have emergency responders come out, they know that person is who they need to talk to. But we also have ID bands and face sheets for all the residents in those red totes. And we try to keep those as up to date as we can. So in the event that we have to transfer our residents to a different facility, you know, that face sheet is going to have all that pertinent information that that person will need to admit them into that facility. And then off-duty personnel might be called in to help with that evacuation. So it's something that we really never want to have to do, but we have a large pool of employees and we want to make sure that everyone comes in to help in that situation. So you might get a call. And then most importantly, we want to make sure that our residents' families are notified as well. So if they just see on the news that Bethany Home Brandon evacuated and they never heard about it, I'm sure they're not going to be very happy. So one thing I cannot stress enough is immediate notification of the administrator. Personally for me, I hate surprises. I don't like to be surprised. So if I hear at a previous facility of mine, I came in one day and they had told me that a resident had eloped and they were looking for that resident for about 45 minutes outside. And I didn't know about that until I got there the next day. Figured out they hadn't done a report, none of these, they hadn't even filled out an incident report. So I was not very happy. So just going through a couple things that I would like to be notified of immediately. So obviously the director of nursing, nurse managers, or that charge nurse on Plummer Dakota, if the director of nursing isn't here, need to notify me of these situations. So a death involving unusual circumstances, an emergency requiring immediate repair authorization. So if we have a storm roll through, damages part of our building, I need to be called and informed of that right away. A fire, a missing resident. If we have our surveyors come in and I'm not in the building, I'd appreciate a call. They like to talk to me, so I would like to come out and be that resource for the surveyors. One that we might not think of initially is urgent residents or family problems or concerns. Most of the time I feel confident in our staff that they're able to handle family concerns, but sometimes you might come across a family that's, very intense and is, disrupting the normal flow of our work progress. Please call and let me know that. That's part of my job, is to deal with our residents and our families. So, violence by any staff or residents. Tyler, have you all gone to Tyler's presentation? Okay, I just want to stress this again. Tyler discussed abuse and neglect reporting, correct? Okay, every single person in this room is a mandatory reporter. If we see any sort of violence or neglect or an abuse situation, that can be verbal abuse as well, please notify me immediately, because we need to take those proper steps to investigate it and report it to our proper state authorities. So, I don't want to, scare anybody, but if you see something like that happen and you don't report it, that's technically against state law. So you really want to make sure that we're reporting those events, not only for yourself and the licenses that you may hold, but most importantly for our residents, to be able to protect all of our residents. So, and then any emergency notification that happens from our emergency preparedness plan, please call and inform me of that immediately. So something that we could very well experience in the event of a severe thunderstorm or tornado with high winds is a loss of phone services. So if we lose our phone services, the person in charge will notify the telephone company with their personal cell phone. Now everybody else, this is the only time that we would like you to have your personal cell phones. So obviously we need to be realistic. If we lose our phone services here, have your personal cell phone on you in case you need to make those emergency calls. And then a designated person and vehicle must be ready to report for any disaster. So we have vehicles out here in Brandon that we can obviously use to transport some of our residents in case of an emergency. So another one that we could very well experience is an electrical power outage. And you don't necessarily need a storm to cause an electrical power outage. Just ask Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls lost power yesterday morning along with 12,000 people in Sioux Falls. No storm, nothing happened, everyone just lost that power. So the number one thing that you need to do in the event of an electrical power outage is identify those residents that require oxygen or other life support measures that require electricity. And where do you bring them to in that event?
Red outlet.
The red outlets. So the red outlets are connected to our emergency generator. They're not going to keep all of our electricity on, but they are going to keep those important things on so we can at least have some power. You want to gather all necessary items like flashlights and extra batteries. Does everyone know where our flashlights are located? They're located in the red bins. Where else? And all of our fire extinguishers. So if you ever wonder where our flashlight is, that's where they're at. And then each facility, like I said, is backed up by generators that are frequently checked. So thank your maintenance staff for that. Fire, we go through a fire drill every month. one thing that I just want to, stress is that, our drills try to be as realistic as possible, but a fire is not going to push a call light and have you go in and answer that and say, on the fire, you need to go pull an alarm. Most of the time what's going to happen is that the fire is going to start and no one's going to see it, and then it's going to put off a smoke detector. So, does everybody know how to tell where a fire is in that situation? Huh?
Red box on plum.
The red box on plum. Very good. Dan, can you tell us where some of the other boxes are?
There's one on Meadows in the entryway.
Yep. So if you go to plum, there's a red box on the wall, and that's going to tell you where that fire or where that smoke detector was triggered. So then you want to head to that neighborhood, if it obviously is safe to go to that neighborhood. At Bethany Brandon, our neighborhoods are kind of set up in an interesting way. They're kind of an L shape. So let's say, one of the 6 emergency steps is to move residents, past the nearest smoke compartment. Let's say a fire is happening in one of the corner rooms on that L. So you move everyone in front of that, past those big doors. What about the other residents that are on that other L?
Put them in their rooms?
No. What you want to do is bring them to the end of the hall and bring them outside. So in case that a fire is, happening and it gets out of control, you don't want to have to then go back into the resident rooms. Just bring them outside through those doors at the end of each neighborhood. That way you're not bringing them past the smoke that the fire is in, or fire is causing, but you're taking them the other way. So, I would say one of the most important things to remember with fires is, fire extinguishers are great, but only use them if it's not going to put you in danger. So if the fire gets out of control, call the police, focus on getting your residents out of there. If it's a small fire, feel free to put it out. But if it's really out of control in that room, don't be a hero. So severe weather. This is one that is very prevalent this time of year, especially as we transition from spring to summer, with those cold and hot fronts combining simultaneously. So does everyone know the difference between a watch and a warning?
Yes.
Can you please tell me what the difference is between a watch and a warning?
A warning is that it's now.
Yes.
And a watch is it could be.
Very good. So a watch is that the conditions are favorable for this to happen, and a warning is that the event has actually been cited. So whether it's a severe thunderstorm, whether it's a flood, whether it's a tornado, it's happening and you need to stay inside and take shelter. So if a watch has been issued, don't necessarily need to take shelter. You do want to take those steps, though, to go around and close all the resident windows, especially if it's a severe thunderstorm or tornado watch. And you want to make sure that you're gathering extra supplies like your flashlights, like batteries, like blankets. Any dietary staff? Very good, very good, very good. In the event that any of those severe thunderstorm or tornado watches are issued, start filling up waters. Start filling up jugs of water, just in case we have damage to our building and lose that water supply. We have weather radios located on each neighborhood that should, we had an interesting experience with our tornado drill, but they should inform you when a severe weather situation is occurring. So always have those on. If a watch has been issued, the person in charge should page overhead that the watch has been issued, and then staff on each of the other neighborhoods should go around and turn on the televisions so we can stay up to date. So obviously that person in charge, if it switches to a warning, should go over and page everybody. But if for some reason they're in a resident's room or working with another staff member, if you have that TV on, you're going to know immediately when it changes to a warning as well. So then you want to take those measures to get residents out into the hallway and get them as far away from windows as possible. Now, what happens if a resident refuses to come out of their room? What do you do?
Put them in the bathroom.
Very good. So you ask them if they would like to go to the bathroom or at least get as far away from the window as possible. If for some reason a resident is bedbound and we can't get that bed out of the room, move that bed as close to that opposite wall away from the window as possible and help protect that resident's head by putting extra blankets or pillows on top of their head. Obviously you don't want to put a bunch of blankets and pillows on them and suffocate them, but you want to at least give them a little bit extra protection in case anything flies through their window. Like I said, in the event of a watch, you want to close all those windows and pull all the curtains, and then gather supplies such as flashlights and batteries. So, tornadoes, obviously, this is obviously one of the major weather concerns that we have, probably the most destructive weather concern we have during the spring and summer. this is a time of year where we like to have residents outside. You know, in the event of a tornado watch, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to tell through common sense that something is about to happen. But if we have residents outside, make sure we bring all of our residents inside. You know, we don't want a Wizard of Oz situation going on. So, move all of our residents behind our fire doors and close those fire doors. So that was something that we discovered during our tornado drill, is that not everyone knew that we needed to close those doors. So make sure that those fire doors are closed. Cover our residents with extra blankets and pillows, like I said, if they're not able to get out of the room. Shut down any equipment, you know, that you can think of that might potentially start on fire if it's damaged. Make sure that our lifts are all secured so those aren't flying around in case a tornado hits our building. Kitchen staff should ensure water is available. One of the most important things in any disaster event, not only tornado but fire, is to remain calm. And I know that's easy for me to say when we're having a little educational session, but if we're not calm, that's going to show, and our residents are going to be calm, and then the situation is going to get out of control. So that's the last thing we want. Just try to remain calm, and that's why we try to do our drills, so we have at least an understanding of what the steps are to help us with that. So once a tornado passes, the first thing you should do is make sure that all residents are accounted for and safe. If our building is damaged, obviously it might be our first instinct to go to that part of the building and to see if residents are, you know, hurt or damaged there. But on your neighborhood, make sure that all of your residents are accounted for, and then we can go out and start to help other people. Obviously, if a resident is hurt or injured, call 911 and, you know, get EMS out here to help them with that. Another thing during the spring and summer is dealing with heat and humidity. So obviously for us, you know, we get hot, but it's different for our residents. Like Angela talked about, our residents lose muscle mass, and that keeps it harder for them to stay hydrated. So when it's really hot and it's really humid, it's a really dangerous time for our residents. So if it gets up into the, you know, the high 80s, you know, 90s, and even into the hundreds, again, bring our residents inside. What you want to do is go around to their rooms, close their blinds, really want to reduce any kind of heat, extra heat that's going to happen. If for some reason we lose any sort of air conditioning, get as many fans as you can and start blowing it on those residents. Help keep them cool. And then offer as much fluid as you can as well. You know, our nursing staff goes around and passes waters, but anybody can ask a resident if they're thirsty. So if it's really hot, whether you're maintenance, dietary, housekeeping, myself as the administrator, if you work in the business office, go ask that resident, can I get you a glass of water? You know, if they say yes, go ask the nurse if that resident has any therapeutic, you know, diets, if they have thickened liquids. But if they don't, get that resident a glass of water. If it gets up to the point, like I said, where we lose air conditioning and it's extremely hot in here, for our nurses, we want to be checking on those residents on an hourly basis to ensure that those vitals are staying stable. If for some reason we notice a resident isn't doing well, we want to take those extra steps to keep them hydrated and get cool washcloths and help keep that resident cool. So, let's see. Missing residents, like I said earlier, this is a point of contention for me just because I've seen it happen before, and we've had it happen here. We've had 3 elopements on Plum in the last month. Luckily now that resident is on our Maple neighborhood and she's been doing much better, but this is a very real situation that can have very real consequences, especially during the winter and especially during the summer. So what you want to do is search all the rooms where that neighborhood, where that resident has lived. Look in closets too. We had that same resident who eloped in Centerville hid in the closet, and we looked for that resident for about half an hour. And then finally the person went back and thought to check in the closet, and the resident was in the closet. So that some of these residents, can get into places you wouldn't think they'd be able to get into. So just make sure you're looking top to bottom in those rooms. Page overhead, missing residents, whatever neighborhood you're on. And all staff who's not currently busy with residents should report to that neighborhood to receive instructions from that nurse on that neighborhood. So it's like, this is where we last saw them. We think they went out this way. I want you, and you to go outside and look for this resident. So if the resident isn't found between 5 and 10 minutes, call 911 so they can start helping us with that search. You want to notify the family, the director of nursing, and me. So thank you for that again. Get a face sheet with a picture of the resident to give the law enforcement so they know what they're looking for. And then, maybe get some clothes or linens that the resident recently used as well. That was something that the police told us we should do in case they have to use a dog to help try to find this resident. Once the resident has been found, page overhead, missing resident all clear.